Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the town of Oakville. It's 7 o'clock on my clock, even if it's 6 o'clock on the wall, so we will begin. Madam Clerk, I understand we have regrets from Councillor Khan. And
Yes.
Council, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Would you like to resolve into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Duddick and Councillor Robinson move in second. All in favor? Carried. So we are resolved into Committee of the Whole. We have no consent items. And our first item is the public hearing item, the recommendation report for the temporary use bylaw extension for Premier Operating Corporation. And if you'll turn your attention to the planner, he will give you a synopsis for the public's benefit and yours of the report before you. Paul, we're all yours.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. The town is in receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment application to permit a 3-year extension to the existing temporary use bylaw. The subject property is located at 2331 9th Line, which is north of the existing hydro corridor. The movie theater has been in operation for over 60 years and currently contains 3 movie screens, projection booths, concession stands, beach volleyball courts, and associated parking. The Livable Oakville Plan designates the lands as business employment. While staff note that the long-term intent of the lands is for employment purposes, there are no official plan concerns with extending the temporary use due to the current servicing constraints with the site. The lands are zoned E1, light employment, subject to special provision number 70 and temporary use number 24T. Special provision 70 permits a drive-in theater with associated parking, accessory buildings, and structures including 2 movie screens and concession booths, while temporary use 24T permits the 3rd movie screen, projection booths, beach volleyball courts, and associated parking. Staff have held a public information meeting on July 26 of 2012 with no public concerns on the application. Staff also note that no concerns were raised by town departments or any commenting agency. As such, staff have no objection to the requested extension of the temporary use bylaw and recommend that council consider approval of bylaw 2012-093.
Thank you, Paul. Before we go any further, Councillor Knoll, I understand you'd like to make a comment on this.
Yes, first of all, Your Worship, I apologize for being a little bit late this evening, but I would like to declare a pecuniary interest in this item. I own and operate a business which is in direct competition with the applicant, and for that purpose, I will be declaring a pecuniary interest.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. Are there questions for the staff? All right. Are there members of the public here with information for council on this matter? All right. Councillor Adams, it's in your ward. Can we look to you?
I'd be pleased to move the staff recommendation on this item.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? It's carried. All right, that brings us to item number 2, and that is the public meeting and recommendation report for the Longo Brothers Fruit Markets. And if you will turn your attention to Brenda Stan at the microphone, she will provide you the same service on this file that Paul gave us on the other ones.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of council. Tonight I'm here to present the public meeting and recommendation report for the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Longo Brothers Fruit Markets to replace 3 site-specific special provisions which currently apply to the Longo's lands with 1 special provision. The lands are located on the south side of Dundas Street, east of Trafalgar Road. There is an existing Longo's food store on the lands. The lands are designated community commercial on Figure 1 central land use. Food stores are permitted use. The lands are currently zoned arterial commercial, C3A, subject to 3 special provisions, 290, 591, and 602. As the lands are subject to 3 special provisions, with lists of permitted uses and different regulations, a zoning bylaw amendment is proposed to replace the 3 special provisions with 1 special provision, SP 602. Special Provision 602 follows the Longo's property boundary and contains one list of permitted uses and regulations. Minor changes have been proposed to SB 602 to incorporate approved Committee of Adjustment decisions, to improve the readability and consistency of the site-specific zoning, and to remove duplicate regulations. A site plan application is also currently under review to permit renovations and a minor addition to the front facade of the Longo's store. No comments have been received from the public during the circulation process, and no members of the public came to the public information meeting. As there has been no public interest in the application, this meeting is a statutory public meeting and the recommendation remaining for this application. Staff recommend that the comments from the public on the zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Longo Brothers Fruit Markets be received and that bylaw 2012-094 be passed. That includes my presentation. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stan. Any questions for staff? Councillor Adams.
Could I just ask our staff if they've considered the issue of the multiple lots that are under the same ownership, and whether there's any concern that if the lots are at some date in the future separated in some way, whether these issues would be of concern later? The different setbacks and all of those things.
Through you, Mayor Burton, right now there's an existing Longo store that straddles two of the property lines. The three properties are all owned by one landowner. Basically, what we're trying to do is just clear up the three special provisions. So the zoning on these lands, they're all zoned C3A, but they are each subject to different regulations and permitted uses. So we wanted just to take them and look at the special provision and just have one special provision which would apply to Longo's lands. We understand there's no, right now Longo has no, I can't think of the word. Longo's has no interest in pursuing any other development opportunities on the lands. No new buildings are proposed, no new structures. They're putting a minor addition to the front of the store, but there's no future plans for these lands right now.
And I don't have any concerns with the current application, what they're working on right now. I'm looking down the road for if any of these changes might cause the municipality concern, should there be some redevelopment proposal at some future date?
Through you, Mayor Burton, at the time that there would be a resubmission for redevelopment, that would be one issue that we could look at as well when the application comes in on these lands.
So the combining of the existing zoning and C of A decisions and so forth, none of that would cause a problem down the road in terms of a requirement. Should they need to come back for a redevelopment application of some sort, I mean, they're going to have to come in for a zoning request anyway, presumably, and they'd have to come in for a site plan. But are there any issues in terms of reduced landscaping requirements or the reduced yard setbacks?
Through you, Mayor Burton, when an application would come in, it would most likely be subject to a zoning bylaw amendment application. As well, the town's going through a comprehensive zoning bylaw review right now, and this may be one of the parcels which we look at, future potential on these lands opportunities. At this time right now, I don't think staff has any concerns with the lot pattern.
Then if there's no public individuals with information for us, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Any other questions, council? Any members of the public with information on this item to share with council? Councillor Adams.
Then my colleagues would like to ensure that everybody knows that this is Ward 6, not Ward 5. On the front page, there's a minor error, a typographical error that they feel hurt by. And, they would like to make sure that everybody knows that it's not their ward. So I'll move the recommendation.
We're not so much hurt. We just want to make sure that Councillor Adam gets credit for all the grocery stores he possibly can.
All right, there you go. Any other discussion or just more fun? Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Brings us to item number 3, and that is the notice of intention to demolish. And if you'll turn your attention to Susan Shepard, she will give you the précis of the underlying reports.
and get the mouse to work, I'll be right with you.
Sorry, I got it.
Here we go. Good evening, Your Worship and members of Council. The application before you concerns a notice of intention to demolish for 474 Lakeshore Road East. Also have two other properties listed here, 86 Park Avenue and 88 Park Avenue, and I will explain why. All three of these properties are currently listed on the Oakville Heritage Register as non-designated properties of interest. These three properties are part of a structure that was originally built as a single-family residence and then subdivided in the 1950s. A notice of intention to demolish has been received for one of these three properties, and that is 474 Lakeshore Road East. Just to give you a brief refresher, the designation process for notices of intention to demolish, council must respond by one of two actions. They either remove the property from the Oakville Heritage Register, which then allows for the demolition of the property, or they need to issue a notice of intention to designate. Staff would like to note at this time that under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Council has the ability to issue a notice of intention to designate for any property that meets the requirements of Ontario Regulation 906, which defines significant cultural heritage value at any time. A notice of intention to demolish is not required to start the designation process. So now I'm going to take you briefly through some of the research for the property. The research report is, of course, included in your agenda package. And I'll begin with a survey of the property. So the survey of the property shows a main structure that's been divided into three units. The top portion is 88 Park Avenue. That's the most northernmost on the right-hand side of the screen. The left-hand side of the screen shows 474 Lakeshore Road East, and then the bottom portion of the property is 86 Park Avenue. As I mentioned, this entire structure was originally built as one house. The oldest portions of the original house date to sometime between 1870 and 1890, but there's very little of historic fabric from that period remaining, or at least visible in the houses right now. Sometime between 1905 and 1930, the property was substantially updated. This is likely during the 1920s, when it was owned by the Brock family. The Brock family lived in Toronto, and they used this property as their summer home, and it originally encompassed at least 2 acres of land. In 1939, Mrs. Brock, who was then widowed, donated the house and the lands, those full 2 acres, to a board of trustees who oversaw the transformation of the property into a home for evacuated British school children during World War II. Some years after the war was over and the boys were sent home, in 1951, the house was subdivided into these 3 units. Each of these units has been altered again over the years, but their staff feels that there is significant heritage fabric remaining. I'm just going to take you through some of the photographs of the property, as this is one of the more unusual properties that we have encountered, certainly. And I've tried to provide some labels on the photographs that show where one property ends and another property begins. And so what we're looking at in this photograph is the north elevation of 474 Lakeshore Road East. This is essentially the front of this property right now. This is what you see from Lakeshore Road. In the corner of the property, you can see one portion of the north and west elevations of 86 Park Avenue. So 474 Lakeshore Road East directly attaches to 86 Park Avenue. 86 Park Avenue then shares a wall with 88 Park Avenue. This is a photograph of the west elevation of 474 Lakeshore Road East. This is a new addition to the building, new meaning I believe the mid-1980s. And this is the south elevation of 474 Lakeshore Road East, where you can see portions of the historic building that is from about the 1920s, as well as the 1980s addition. Like flipping back around the property to the other side, this is probably one of the more confusing images, but it shows portions of all 3 of these properties, so that you can see the west elevation of 88 Park Avenue, part of the north and west elevation of 86 Park Avenue, and the north elevation of 474 Lakeshore Road East. This is the north elevation of 88 Park Avenue. And this portion of the property also had a substantial addition, and that would be in the mid-1990s. Originally, this was a one-story portion of the building, and a second story was added on, I believe, in 1997. This is the elevation from Park Avenue, and so you can see both 88 Park Avenue and 86 Park Avenue, and the red line, of course, is a rough division of where the two properties meet. And again, this is 86 Park Avenue with 88 Park Avenue in the corner, wrapping around the south elevation of 86 Park Avenue. And so I think I've taken you all the way around the property to show you, all the way around the undivided house, showing you three separate properties. This is an undated photograph from staff files. We believe it's pre-1990. As you can clearly see, that 88 Park Avenue is a one-story portion of the building at that point in time. So it's taken definitely before 1997. But the portion of 86 Park Avenue remains very similar to what it is today. This historic photograph of the house, which was taken in July of 1940 for a Globe and Mail article, which covered the opening of Brockstow House, shows portions of 86 Park Avenue and 474 Lakeshore Road East on the south elevations. As I mentioned earlier, Ontario Regulation 906 is the tool that we use to determine if a property has significant cultural heritage value and if it is worthy of designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The regulation has three categories: design physical value, historic associative value, and contextual value. A property only has to meet one of these requirements to be considered worthy of designation. The design value of the house is as a representative example of the Tudor Revival style. Although the earlier structure, although we do have evidence of an earlier structure on the site, because the historic fabric of that building is so limited, the real design and architectural value of this property is mostly limited to the circa 1920s additions that reflect the Tudor Revival style. Here we go. The most significant value of this property, and by that I actually mean the undivided house, so I actually mean all three properties together, is the historic and associative value. As I mentioned, the property was associated with the Brock family of Toronto, who donated the property to charity in 1939. It is the use of the undivided house as Brockstow House, which as a home for evacuated British school children, that has the strongest historic associations. Brockstow House was a community-supported endeavor. The mayor at the time was on the board of trustees, and such notable women as Hazel Chisholm Matthews were on the house committee. And people from all walks of life contributed to the refurbishment of the house to make the boys feel at home. Brockstow House was home to about 10 to 15 boys during the years 1940 and 1944. For those who did not fight in the war, doing their bit at home was very important, and Oakville's community spirit was shown through many activities, such as collecting donations for the Red Cross and holding paper and metal drives. It is staff's professional opinion that Brockstow House was one of the most significant community contributions to the war effort at home. In terms of the contextual value of the property, the house does support the evolving character of the surrounding neighborhood. Staff recognize that the context of these three properties has changed over the years. The early structure on the site was possibly related to farming. The Brock estate was used as a summer home during the 1920s, and during the time it was used as Brockstow House, the property had 2 acres surrounding it. While the portion of the house that fronts onto Park Avenue, that would be 86 Park Avenue and 88 Park Avenue, retains some prominence, the context of the property has certainly changed with the subdivision of surrounding properties. It is staff's recommendation that based on the information available and applying that information to the criteria outlined in Ontario Regulation 906, that the property at 474 Lakeshore Road East and the two other properties that made up the house in the 1940s, that would be 86 Park Avenue and 88 Park Avenue, meet at least one of the criteria of Ontario Regulation 906 and are worthy of designation under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Well, staff note that the notice of intention to demolish is only for 474 Lakeshore Road East. It is our opinion that the heritage value of 474 Lakeshore Road East is tied to the heritage value of the undivided house. While the units have existed as separate properties since the 1950s, the most significant period of the undivided house is from 1940 to 1944, when it was used as Broxtowe House. Portions of all three of these properties were part of that undivided house and are connected by their heritage value. Staff have given this application quite a bit of consideration. We've considered if the portion at 474 Lakeshore Road East could be removed and if an easement agreement would be sufficient to protect the heritage fabric of the entire building. However, it is our conclusion that the removal of the portion at 474 Lakeshore Road East could diminish the heritage value of the entire structure. I'd just like to clarify that as well by saying the removal could potentially damage the remaining portions of the undivided structure, especially the portion to which it's attached, which is 86 Park Avenue, but we don't have a structural assessment report, and I'm a heritage professional, I'm not a structural engineer. In my professional opinion, removal of 474 Lakeshore Road East would negatively impact the heritage value of the undivided house, as it would remove a portion of the house that existed during its most significant period, between 1940 and 1944. And therefore, it is staff's recommendation that notice of intention to designate be issued for the properties at 474 Lakeshore Road East, 86 Park Avenue, and 88 Park Avenue. Staff would also like to note that this recommendation was supported by Heritage Oakville at the committee meeting of October 9th, 2012. And we'd also like to call attention to the fact that Appendix C of this report has been replaced with an updated version that was also copied to staff, and staff have read as well. I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you have, and I believe the applicants are here as well tonight.
Well, then let us see what we have for questions. Any questions over here? Any questions over here? Any members of the public with information for council on the item? Madam Clerk, we have a registered delegation or two here. Would you like to call them?
The first delegation is Mr. Ralph Cervo Lorenz. Sorry if I mispronounced that.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. There's actually, as you've just learned, there's three houses, so there's three of us here tonight. I'm the main person here because I own the house at issue, but the linked houses are represented here by their owners as well. So if you're okay, I'll go first. And okay.
Can I just ask you to try to give most of your voice toward the mic?
Yes. Yes.
Super, thank you.
Just give me 1 second to get set up, please.
Take your time.
Now, I may need your help to get, I have a PowerPoint as well, Your Worship. I had prepared, which I understand you received in advance, a submission of my own, which you should have there somewhere. I've also prepared a PowerPoint presentation here. So, how do I get this moving? Sorry.
Each slide, you just click the arrow over here.
Be generous here. It's a public hearing.
All right. All right. What I'm going to do first off, please, is just take you all to the very end of my presentation and to the survey of the house there. And I'm sorry, I did not anticipate I would be looking at a screen and you would be looking at your computers or your monitor. So I intended to point out to you really that the only part, not only do we have the three houses that you see that have been described to you, but we have my house, which I've labeled as a subject property there. There's also a garage off to the side on the left, which you see there. But the house we're talking about is what's labeled there, the subject house, and it's made up of two parts, as you've heard. The part from the 1920s and then the addition from 1984. And so what I just want to highlight for you is really that the only part we're talking about here tonight is what's labeled the 1920s part. Of that entire structure that you see there is only that. To the left of it, you have the 1984 addition, which the town doesn't attribute any heritage value to, and obviously neither would I. And to the right, you have the two houses, 86 and 88 Park. So it's only maybe almost 60% of our house then that's at issue, and it shares a wall with the one house, the one at 86 Park. So my photos are not neither as clear or as colorful as the town's, but hopefully you'll see this is a north elevation as well, and I'm trying just to make that same point that I made to you, but just so that you can now make reference to the photographs that you have in the town's material. And that is that really we're talking only about that middle portion that I have between two lines, the 1920s portion. The 1984 portion is what you see to the right. It's not an issue. I want to just highlight, while we're here, this question of the Tudor revival style, and I have some comments to make on that, but I want to just note for you that the features that you see there in those two houses, the two parts of my house, these are all what I described as add-ons. They've been all painted on and they've been modified over years, including by ourselves at one point when we repainted the house. And so the features that you might call Tudor or Tudoresque, as I call them, in the 1920s portion of the house that you see here, the middle portion, are really, they're all painted for one. None of the windows have all been replaced. And while there's some argument, I guess, and some difference of opinion between ourselves as to whether that middle portion really exhibits the kinds of features that are recognized as being consistent with a Tudor style, I would want to just leave with you that most of the Tudor features on this side of the house are on that 1984 edition, which isn't at issue here. So I'm now, as town staff did a moment ago, I'm just moving over to the left. And again, just to help you orient yourselves, if I may, there's the 1920s portion now is on the right. And then you see the other houses. In the middle, you see 86 Park, which is the oldest part of the house. And the one which in my submission without question has the majority of the heritage value here for all kinds of reasons, historical, structural, stylistically, and so on. And then 88 Park, which is the part on the left, and I'm sorry, I see now my handwriting can barely be seen, it's on the left part of the house. So here you have sort of the three houses from the north, looked at from Lakeshore, and the 1920s portion of my house on the right. So then, let me now go back to the beginning of the presentation. I just touched briefly on the highlights. My submission is extensive. I try to summarize the main points in my PowerPoint, and that also ended up being fairly long. And I recognize I only have a few minutes left. You've heard already then that this property from the 50s on has been made up of three different houses, completely different in every possible way. That's how it was bought and sold over many years, including by ourselves. So really, and I recognize that this house probably raises some issues that are unique with respect to designating a property under the Heritage Act, because you're really talking about three properties. They were at 1.3, but they've grown over time. There was originally, when town staff spoke about the early farmhouse in the 1870s, 1890s, or thereabouts, It was really just the oldest portion of the house, which you saw there as 86 Park, and then parts were added on over the years, with my part being the last one. So the question then I think needs to be kept in mind really is, do we then designate all 3 houses? And you'll be hearing from the other owners with respect to where they stand on that. The opinion is divided on that, as you'll hear. Certainly from my point of view, one shouldn't designate one part of one house, my house. One shouldn't designate the entire 3 houses when there's only one part of one house which has some significance. Again, I take a different view of how significant that issue of the English schoolboys that were housed in the entire house, all 3 houses at one point, as you heard, and I'll come to that in a second. I think I've covered that. Again, I don't hear the town staff suggest that, other than with reference to the schoolboy event, and really looking only at the entire period of the 1920s and on, as I just heard before, as being the period of significance, structurally, architecturally, stylistically, there isn't a whole lot of value in my portion of the house that's at issue here. I don't think town staff disagree, but it certainly is part of the house that was once used to house the English schoolboys during the Second World War. Now, point number 2 there is of significance in my submission, Your Worship, and again is an issue that is raised here by this unique setup that we have, and that is whether really what we might be concerned about here is what would happen to the rest of the house if my part comes down. And I've said this before the Heritage Committee, and that is one, it's a question for the structural engineers. It's not a heritage question, first of all. And 2, I recognize from the start, and I indicated this to town staff from the very beginning, that if this cannot be done without threatening the rest of the house, then it shouldn't be done. I wouldn't be proposing to be doing it. Whatever demolition could take place would have to be done in a way that protects, obviously, the physical integrity of the rest of the house, or the other 2 houses, to be more accurate, as well as their character, their heritage attributes, and so on. So whether that can or cannot be done is not something that any of us in this room today can assess. Someone else would need to address, and I understand that and acknowledge that. And then I would say, as I have to town staff before then, that simply, legally, the demolition permit could simply be made conditional on myself satisfying those issues to the satisfaction of the planning department, I assume, is who it would be. And if they say this cannot be done, then that would be the end of it. My view is, and I don't have an expert to come and tell you that, I did consult with some people only informally, which is why I don't have anything to put before you, was that separating the Siamese twins down that wall could be done successfully. But that's as far as I can go on that today. Sorry. Okay, I've covered that. So, in addition, this issue of whether one can separate the houses, I'm not sure how one goes around, how you would go about trying to figuring out to what extent separating the houses diminishes, to use the word that's used by town staff, the heritage value of the rest of the house. I really don't have much to say on that. I gather that is the view of town staff. I understand that. I'm not sure I understand the concept. I don't understand the basis for it particularly. I'm sure demolishing my portion is likely to have some impact on that. But as far as I can tell, based on what I've read and what has been together by town staff, I see it as an issue. I don't see it as an issue that should then translate into designating all 3 houses under the Act. In this portion, then, this is the issue that I touched on very briefly before about whether this house really exhibits the types of features that merit calling it a Tudor revival style house. And, the point that I want to make just quickly is most of the features that one could call Tudor or Tudoresque are add-ons. It's a common thing to do. One sees it in a lot of places. And if you were to ask, sort of the man in the street, the woman in the street about what they associate with a Tudor house, they will tell you that that what they would think is exactly the kinds of things you see in the house. Mostly painted brown, fake half beams, I think, half timbers is what they're properly called. Here's a quote, for example, that makes that point, that every time there was a revival of this type of style, it got reduced more and more to the point where it really didn't take a whole lot. A single gable and a few nailed-on panels would allow people to say, I have a sort of Tudoresque, Tudor-like house. I think my portion of the house is pretty close to that sort of thing. And I say that because, we're all looking at the same sources. And when we do, we look at what really makes a house Tudor, Tudor revival, Tudoresque, and so on. Those are what you see there, are the kinds of features that really make the style.
Sure.
Yes.
Your time has elapsed, and
Yes.
you're now really debating the merits of designation. And you lead me to wonder if has anyone explained that this is not a decision to designate? This is only a decision to give notice of intent to designate,
I understand.
which starts a new and different clock, which if we don't do,
Yes.
allows the demolition clock
I
to
understand, Your
continue.
Worship.
So there'll be lots of time to get to the bottom of the questions about the worthiness of the emulation of the style and the structural questions that were raised.
Right.
And in the circumstances, given the limited nature of what's before us, it's just notice of intent to designate. I'm actually surprised that you aren't supporting that, given that all it does is slow things down and give everyone the time to get to the answers that you've raised here.
I understand. I mean, the level of detail is what it is, but I'm really just responding to what's being put to me by town staff and what went before the committee. So I'm merely adding and responding to that. I understand what you're saying, Your Worship. I understand the process.
So
And
you'll have plenty of
Yes,
opportunity.
yes, and I do.
All right.
So if my time is up, and I'll let my neighbors
There's a
speak.
possibility that you may have more time before us, however, this evening, because I haven't polled council for questions yet.
Fair enough.
So let me look to that.
All right. Should we do that now or after you
I'm
hear
gonna do
from
that
my?
right now.
Thank you.
Any indication of questions? Councillor Adams. Councillor,
You have an electronic presentation. Could our clerks provide copies of that to us? Thank you.
yes, Councillor. Councillor
That
Duddock.
was an easy one.
That was an easy one. Councillor Duddock.
Thank you. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the letter you provided us is basically reintroduced in an electronic format for PowerPoint. Is that not correct? The one that you've given us as
The
part of our
lengthier
agenda?
submission? Yes, I try to summarize that
Yeah.
in the PowerPoint, yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Just in case you wanted to see a copy of it.
So Councillor, you can just confirm, I
Yeah.
believe you have his new submission on your desk? Or in your material?
It's in the appendix.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank
you-
you. Go
you're-
ahead, Councillor.
Yes, thank you, through you, Your Worship. I have a question of staff, and rather than introduce it at this time, should I wait until the other two presentations or delegations are complete?
That would be fine. Mr. Cuervo Lawrence, thank you very much for your
Thank you, Your
time and
Worship.
your information. And Madam Clerk, would you call the next delegation?
Next delegation listed is Mr. Michael Pratt.
Mr. Pratt, welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Good evening, Your Worship and Councillors. I have very little to say other than in Mr. Cuervo Lorenz's report. He says that all three houses although it is only the subject house which is proposed to be demolished, town staff has recommended that all three houses be designated all three owners are opposed to designation. If designation is going to prevent the demolish of his house, I am all in favor of designation. His house is physically attached. Our walls, which include a living room, kitchen, bathroom, hall, and bedroom, are separated by that, 2x4s and plaster. And the fact that he's going to surgically remove it or have someone do it with minimal disturbance to the majority of the property, I find that a little bit hard to swallow, and I recommend the recommendation of staff to council that the request to demolish be declined. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt, for your information. Questions? All right. Madam Clerk, was the third delegation, I believe?
Yes, we have Mr. Ben Dunn.
Mr. Dunn, do we have that right? Welcome. Council looks forward to your information.
Hi. Your Worship, councillors. I'm Ben Dunn, and I'm the owner on the other side, 88 Park Avenue. And I just want to say at this point, and it may be, given your earlier statement, it may be inappropriate at this point, but I'm not in favor of the designation of that property as a heritage property. Particularly mine, because I don't believe in the idea of who slept here is an important factor in determining a lot of this. Beyond that, I'm going to stay away from it. You still have to make a decision on demolition, but from my point of view, that's where I stand.
Don't hurry away. So you indicate that you understood my point, that this isn't actually designation, this is only creating some time?
Right, but I guess part of the reason I'm here tonight is in reading the agenda, it said that if you don't speak when you're supposed to, you're not allowed to make objections later. And I wasn't sure where that fit in within the context of this discussion tonight. So I just thought I'd make my point.
You're always wise to come, and I'm very glad you did. And you definitely are now on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your information. Any other delegations? All right. Any other members of the public with information for the council on this? Councillor Dudek, you had questions for staff.
Yes, thank you. Through you to staff. In the letter that was provided to us on page 46 of our agenda, would have been page 3 of his letter. There's, I think, 2, 3, 4. Item number 4, it is improper and unfair to designate houses that are not subject of any notice of intention to demolish. Could staff give an indication as to, under the Heritage Act, what is and isn't permitted in terms of designation, and whether it hinges on a demolition?
Through you, Your Worship, Town Council can issue a notice of intention to designate for any property that they feel meets the requirements of Ontario Regulation 906. Designation can be reactive, that is in relation to a notice of intention to demolish, or it can be proactive, brought forward by staff, suggested by council, suggested by a member of the public, and it can be considered that way as too. There's certainly no legal restriction for designation to hinge on a notice of intention to demolish.
All right, then. It looks like we're looking for a decision.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Before you rush to this, can I just ask if, is this in Ward 3? I wonder if the Ward 3 boys have anything to say. Do you want to give us a motion? Councillor Giddings moves the staff recommendation. You certainly understand, right, Councillor? Thank you. Discussion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. That brings us to item number 4, our second discussion item, and that's the Housing Information Report. And if we will turn our attention to Brad Sunderland, he will give us some edification on this evening's report, which is quite extensive and promises council, if it doesn't anything else, it promises a heavy year of work throughout 2013 to some of us to meet the January 2014 deadline for a new comprehensive housing strategy. So, Mr. Sunderland, frighten us, or edify us, or both?
All right, thank you, Your Worship and members of council. So I'm here tonight to present the Housing Information Report. Staff prepared this report to provide an overview of the housing legislation, policies, and documents at the provincial, regional, and municipal levels of government to highlight how these policies and documents work together in order to create a policy framework which provides for a full range of housing choice. It also highlights the framework under which the town must operate. So as you likely know, there's an extensive amount of documents and studies on the subject of housing. And for the purposes of this presentation, only some of the key documents will be highlighted for the purpose of brevity. So the province provides a number of documents and legislation related to housing. These documents include the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, and the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. These documents outline the policy planning framework. These documents specify that providing a full range of housing, including affordable housing, is a matter of provincial interest. They direct land use authorities to provide for an appropriate range of housing types and densities to meet projected requirements of current and future residents. The province requires planning authorities to develop housing strategies which set out a plan including policies for official plans to meet the needs of all residents. In 2011, the Strong Communities Through Affordable Housing Act, Bill 140, came into effect as part of the province's long-term affordable housing strategy. Bill 140 amended the Planning Act, the Residential Tenancies Act, and replaced the Social Housing Reform Act with the new Housing Services Act. Many of the amendments were completed to improve the affordable housing system. More specifically, Bill 140 amended the Planning Act in 3 ways. Firstly, the Planning Act was amended to include affordable housing as a matter of provincial interest. Secondly, the Act was amended to require municipalities to provide official plan policies allowing second units, such as basement apartments, in new and existing developments, and requires zoning regulations to implement those policies. The amendments also remove the ability to appeal municipally determined standards for second units, except at the 5-year review stage, and gives authority to the province to make regulations authorizing the use of and prescribing standards for secondary units, which would prevail over municipally determined standards. And lastly, the Act was amended to extend the time frame of temporary use permissions for garden suites from 10 years up to 20 years, with the potential for 3-year extensions. And garden suites are a defined term in the Planning Act, which are 1-unit detached residential structures containing bathroom and kitchen facilities that are ancillary to an existing residential structure and that are designed to be portable. So in the Oakville context, the new Housing Services Act, introduced through Bill 140, requires the region of Halton to develop a local housing and homelessness plan, which, among other things, must address matters of provincial interest and be consistent with the Ontario Housing Policy Statement, which provides additional policy context and direction to support the development of local housing and homelessness plans. The province also has a handbook that municipalities can access, which highlights the tools available to support affordable housing opportunities. So the region of Halton is responsible for delivering and administering assisted housing. Through its official plan policy structure, affordable housing is supported and encouraged in meeting the housing needs of the region's residents. The comprehensive housing strategy establishes an approach to housing from homelessness to market housing. The strategy demonstrates the responsibilities that the government, nonprofit, and for-profit sectors have in providing housing and support services. Through the strategy, the region developed its housing model, which identifies the assisted housing and affordable housing income thresholds, as well as housing gaps. The housing model is run annually to identify the current threshold and gaps, and the results are reported in the region's annual State of Housing Report. The region is in the process of updating its comprehensive housing strategy to meet the provincial requirements for developing housing and homelessness plans. The 2006 Regional Official Plan contains the in effect goals, objectives, and policies for housing. As part of the Sustainable Halton program, which reviewed the current Regional Official Plan, the Housing Directions Report was prepared, which informed amendments to the Regional Official Plan housing policies. The amendments were introduced as part of ROPA 38, which is currently under appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board. In tandem with the Sustainable Halton process, a joint municipal housing statement was developed between the region and its local municipalities. It recommended a number of policies and programs to help increase the amount of affordable housing in Halton. The policy recommendations which relate to planning were included as part of ROPA 38. The State of Housing Report is an annual report which includes information on housing issues, including the number and types of housing units completed annually within the region, the identification of gaps between the supply and demand of assisted and affordable housing, a review of housing supply, demand, and need in Halton during the past year for various housing segments, including market, assisted, affordable, and special needs housing. It also provides a review of the state of homelessness, as well as an evaluation of the density and affordability housing targets in ROPA 38. The most recent State of Housing Report provides a statement from 2010. The town is responsible for developing local official plans and zoning bylaws which are consistent with or conform to the policies and direction in provincial and regional planning frameworks. The Livable Oakville Plan, as well as the North Oakville East and West secondary plans, provide a flexible housing framework which encourages and promotes a wide range of housing types to meet the diverse needs of the community through all stages of life. Both plans also provide policies consistent with Bill 140, which require municipalities to provide policies for second units. The town's existing zoning bylaws also contain regulations for these uses. In addition, as part of the ongoing in-zone project, which is the zoning bylaw review, the town is examining the implementation of the Livable Oakville Plan policies, which includes regulations for second units. So in short, depending on how short that was, the hierarchy of housing documents at all three levels form the policy framework behind the implementation of provincial interests and the goal to provide a full range of housing choice. So just in brief, some of the highlights from looking at all the different documents that were reviewed for this report. Staff made note of several key points. So the region's State of Housing Report for 2010 indicates that there are gaps in both assisted and affordable housing region-wide. It also identifies a low rental vacancy rate. While the town in its capacity does not have the authority to provide housing, the town does have the capacity through its policies to create an environment which would permit the provision of assisted, affordable, and special needs housing, making it easier for housing providers to find appropriate locations to meet housing demands. The amendments to the Planning Act through Bill 140 require municipalities to allow for second units. As specified, Oakville currently does this both within its official plans and zoning bylaws. The town is responsible for determining where accessory apartments are appropriate, as well as appropriate standards. The regulations and permissions for accessory apartments are currently being examined. And with regard to the Livable Oakville Plan and North Oakville secondary plans, the town is required to review its policies during the 5-year review process to ensure there is continued conformity with the regional official plan. So with the conclusion of ROPA 38 at the Ontario Municipal Board, it will likely have bearing on the town's policies going forward. As part of the in-zone project, regulations around various housing forms are also being examined. Staff note that there are many municipalities that are currently at the Ontario Municipal Board or other human rights tribunals determining the appropriateness of certain standards such as minimum separation distances between certain housing forms such as group homes. The report before you references particular challenges with the City of Toronto. However, similar challenges have been seen in the City of Hamilton as well as the City of Kitchener. And the results of these appeals will give a good indication on the appropriate direction that zoning should take in this regard. So all things considered, I'd like to thank you for listening and welcome questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sunderland, for both the presentation and the underlying report, which I found fascinating, if a little daunting at the amount of work that's ahead of us. Councillor Dudek, you have questions?
Thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. I know the issue of secondary suites is front and foremost in terms of the Halton Housing Advisory Committee. And I know that I've raised it, as you mentioned, in the in zone. I know that our colleagues to the, or west of us rather, City of Burlington currently provides that within their zoning bylaw. Have we done any, what shall I say, fact-finding or gathering of data in regards to how many are actually seizing the opportunity to provide this? In other words, what's the uptake within the community in order to meet those targets, seeing as that's what they're providing?
In terms of the uptake of them, we haven't done any research in that regard. However, there are policy regulations in Burlington, as you said, that do provide for that opportunity to occur. They have a set of regulations which is different from ours, but as a best practice comparison, we can use their regulations in determining what might be appropriate here as well.
So going forward, if and when we see the results of ROPA 38, that will be combined through the in-zone process? Is that what you're referring to?
I believe the in-zone process has a residential technical paper upcoming, which will speak to some of these issues as well.
Thank you.
Any others? So, Mr. Sunderland, just to clarify for the public, help me if I'm wrong here. I took your report to be saying, FYI, Town of Oakville councillors, there's a lot of work going to need to go on at the region, and several things that need to be settled, not just ROPA 38, which is before the board, but also some other cases in other cities. And when that smoke clears, we may have to make some changes to livable Oakville. Is that what I should have taken from this report?
Yes. So
Okay.
during the 5-year review, which is the Planning Act timeframe for having to review our official plan, we'll look at this.
So this is really a heads up for down the road when at least a year's worth of work has to unfold before we actually see the puck.
Correct.
Here. All right, thank you very much for that. Council, I'd look for the, wait, sorry. Madam Clerk, we have at least one delegation. Would you please call the delegation?
Yes, Mr. Garth Brown is listed.
Welcome, Mr. Brown. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, council, town staff, and attendees. It's with great pleasure, and I'll look to see if I can find the PowerPoint that was sent across. Brown housing. How many Browns are there right there? Ah, perfect. And to play it, I assume we go down here. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. It's with great pleasure to see the multiple mentions of accessory units and focus on affordable housing in the Housing Information Report being submitted tonight. I delegate before you tonight with the intent to reinforce the, I'm going to say, acute need for our town to be inclusive of all Canadians, the social and moral benefits of welcoming residents with diversity of incomes, cultures, and disabilities into all of our communities speaks to the human rights of every Canadian as cited in a long list of documents, which include the following. And all of these documents reflect the need and right for dignified housing. Well, the Canadian federal government has a long history of commitments. Its delivery on those commitments has been less than recognized. And I'm sorry, I don't know why. It must have been the conversion from Windows or from Mac to Windows. It never fails. But in 2009, a UN report reflected that Canada is facing a national housing emergency. That report was done in preparation for the 2011 Olympics in Vancouver. And as a result, some of the key areas of neglect were the fact that as a G8 country, we are the last to not have a national housing strategy. It's shown that there's been a lot of discord, if you will, between all levels of government, discrimination in the rental housing sector, and a major impact on women in particular being affected. So tonight, on behalf of and I should finish off by saying this is what we're seeing as we roll out in terms of our Canadian track record and its focus on affordable housing. And you can see it's dropped and is continuing to drop in the foreseeable future. And these are all CMHC reports. So on behalf of hundreds of individuals here in Oakville who are experiencing the ripple effect of those decisions over the past 2 decades, I'd ask us to work hard together on this housing submission and get back on track. To do so will certainly allow us the opportunity to save money. And I know that that is important to all of us, all taxpayers and all governments, because when you look at the comparisons, it costs a whole lot to suffer the health consequences of inadequate or precarious housing. It costs a lot to deal with prisoners who quite often are affected by less than positive neighborhoods. The shelter, including the one that we have here in Halton, right in our town, is expensive to run, but it's necessary. It's the only one of its kind, and in fact, we need a family shelter desperately in the region. Rent supplements are a more cost-effective way to go, and social housing, or if you will, subsidized housing, is an even more cost-effective way to go. I share these with you as they were shared with me just recently at a human rights presentation in Toronto. With that, I ask all of you to consider that Oakville already has a place and a strong track record when it comes to serving those in need. We do have 2,248 community homes which are subsidized and supported throughout all 4 corners of Oakville. And I have to ask you to consider the benefits that those residents in those homes have gained by living in our great community. And I'd ask you also to consider what they have given us in terms of their willpower, their strength, their fortitude to beat the odds and to rise above some of the challenges life has provided them. One of the events back in 1989 you might have seen on the second slide was the focus of Canada to end child poverty by the year 2000. That unfortunately has not happened. In fact, today, as this slide reflects, we are in the bottom 6 of the countries reflected here, and other studies show us in very much lagging position when it comes to that. Oakville is no exception to that because I believe it is 1 out of 4 single female parent families are living below the LICO line in Oakville. That's unacceptable. Throughout Halton, the situation is the same. It doesn't matter which part of the area we look at. There are definitely challenges in every area of our region. Oakville is no exception to that. And what struck me was the fact that these concentrated areas reflect people spending more than half of their income. All right? Not just 30%, but more than half of their income. On top of that, in Oakville, whether it's family households or whether it's individuals, whether you're a tenant or whether you're an owner, as you can see in Oakville, and I'll go back to the first one, almost 9 out of 10 owners are paying more than 30% of their income on shelter, 72% of tenanted or rented families, and then moving forward, about 7 out of 10 individuals are faced with that same dilemma, spending 30% or more. This is heartbreaking, but it is a reality, and we're seeing it at the shelter, and we're seeing it everywhere, and that is the fact that seniors are not protected from this reality. These numbers reflect the number of seniors who are tenants, who are, again, having to pay more than 30% of their income, fixed income in many respects. That reflects 2 out of 3 people who are 75 and over, and more than half of those who are 65 and over. In decades past, no one ever heard of seniors going bankrupt, but it's happening today, and it has been growing since 1990 when these stats were taken at an alarming rate. In our environment here, we have a rather unique situation. The Hatch list back in December 2010 identified 2,140 applicants. The latest numbers that are now appearing on several websites, City of Burlington has it, as well as the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association, shows that figure in one short year has gone up to 3,153. We've got families being turned away from Halton Multicultural Council because they don't have enough locations, and Support and Housing Halton has 170 clients on their wait list. I'm going to move right forward to solutions here. We need to take aggressive steps to turn the curve on this and move forward rather than what seems to be moving backwards. I'd be happy to comment on the Burlington figures that have been mentioned during the staff presentation. I do have some information for you there, but I'm going to jump right over to the recommendations considerate of time. First off, as the next year progresses and as the housing report unfolds and debate and discussion takes place as it should in a democratic environment, I'm going to ask all of you to consider the following. Please approve the opportunity for all Oakville homeowners to create legal conforming accessory units throughout our town. Encourage YIMBYism. It's the tone from the top that will dictate how the community responds. YIMBYism is yes in my backyard, yes to integration, and yes to an egalitarian environment. Existing illegal units, which there are many of in this town, will be compelled to conform and to gain property value as well as to help agencies in need. They'll be able to come on board and be renovated to meet code. I ask you to remove development charges for those homeowners intent on helping the wait lists of Halton Region and its housing agencies. I ask you to ensure building permits are not cost prohibitive and avoid licensing fees. Studies have shown in Vancouver and elsewhere that licensing fees are a deterrent and in fact will compel homeowners to build illegal units. It works backwards, and that's been proven in Vancouver and other Canadian jurisdictions. Encourage bonusing, but let's be cognizant of the fact that it alone will not address the real and immediate need for housing today. An example would be if 100 units are going to be built in an apartment building, and through bonusing we give them 2 extra floors, and there becomes 120 units altogether. Halton Region would only take 12 of those units because their perception is that since 10% of the Halton area is suffering, we'll take 10% of those 120 units. 12 units will not put a dent in the wait lists. I'd ask you to revisit the hospital lands and recognize the potential for creating integrated housing models for all ages and income levels in that space. And as discussions evolve around North Oakville, please note our region is in desperate need for an emergency family shelter. All right, families are being turned away. Greyhound treatment, unfortunately, which is on one of the slides here, is a reality. Here's a bus ticket to Hamilton. Here's a bus ticket to Toronto. We don't have space for you in Halton. And that's a commonly used phrase. With 2 seconds left, I'm going to ask as you drive home tonight, and we all drive home tonight to the comfort of our homes, I'll ask you to think about Robert. At 5:30 this evening, he was discharged from Oakville Trafalgar Memorial Hospital. He's had a long battle with some challenges in life. Right now, he is heading over to safe beds. Robert is 72 years young. He's been through a lot. He's not sure about life skills or even how to cook his own meals right now. And it's very sad when our society has to take a 72-year-old gentleman and put him into that type of a housing environment. So I thank you for your time. I look forward to your recommendations and consideration of all the options, and let's work together to make it a better tomorrow. I welcome your questions.
Thank you for your information. Are there questions? Councillor Dudek.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, Garth, for bringing forth this important issue. You touched on several aspects of using secondary suites, accessory units. Are there other benefits other than providing affordable housing for people? In other words, are there spin-off benefits that are associated with introducing those?
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. Through you, Mayor. Yes. May I begin by starting with the opportunity, first off, for income. And let's take, for example, Someone who has a bungalow that has room to grow, let's say the basement. So that person can develop the bungalow immediately with an investment of $50,000, as it shows on your screen right now. The mortgage payments, the insurance costs to have that property legally developed, all right, and then the monthly income, and I'm being conservative here, but through the agency network and through the Hatch waitlist, $800 a month is not out of line for a one-bedroom apartment. There are tax deductions and increasing equity on the home because, again, it's legally conforming in context, which will allow for a monthly net gain of $850. For a $50,000 investment over 12 months, as you can see on the screen, that's a 20% return on investment. So that's the financial side. In South Oakville, we have a lot of homeowners who want to stay where they are. Age in place is the buzzword, right? Those homeowners could very effectively and proactively right now think about how mobile they'll be 5 years from now or 10 years from now and do something like this. Take their bungalow, create a basement apartment to generate immediate revenues, continue to live on the top. They could then look at their backyard. And with a zoning variance, which is available in Burlington through process and through all the right processes and for all the right reasons, they could then build a modular unit attached to their home. The modular unit could be totally accessible, ground floor entry, wider entrances, hallways, lower countertops, bathroom efficiencies, all for, again, that future consideration. And that homeowner can then stay in their neighborhood, stay close to their doctors, the retailers they know, the neighbors they love, and make that their home for a longer period of time. And take the anxiety, the fear away from having to leave Oakville with nowhere to go but beyond the regional borders. So those are two of the examples, and certainly the opportunity to have, how shall I say, vigilance for a senior. If they slip and fall, if there is someone living in the basement or somewhere else on that property, they're more likely to notice that he or she is not around right now, and they've got someone that they can reach out to. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Councillor Dudek. And I would point out in the report on pages 67 and 68, there's some additional benefits such as increased support through demand for transit that everyone might want to give some consideration to. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brown, could you explain what area in Oakville is already legislated to have these accessible flats, granny flats, whatever you want to call them, and how many we currently have in Oakville of that nature?
Okay. Through you, Mayor, this question might be better directed to town staff. My understanding, and it is in the document, is that there's an area up through the Trafalgar Road just south of Dundas corridor, which has been granted the right, if you will, to build accessory units with the proper parking and entrance considerations and square footage of existing home versus what's coming in. There is also another area just to the west of that, a small pocket that is available. And in the new Oakville, livable Oakville plan on the north side of Dundas, it has, from what I've read and interpreted, it is available there. The area that I see as being greater benefit is south of the QEW. That is where we've got older homes, smaller homes on larger lots that have character. They're built solid, they're dry as can be and all. And these are the homes that are right now, to a degree, underutilized. And it provides the opportunity for so many homeowners to now take advantage of the opportunity in front of them if this zoning was expanded further south to the lake, so that they could then live longer in the home that they love and open the doors for younger families moving in and keeping our schools full, building our labor pool. Particularly if we want manufacturing to continue to grow here as it has in past years, we need to have the laborers who are able to work in those manufacturing environments.
Thank you. I did also want to know how many legal accessory units we have in Oakville, but I'll ask.
179.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, I digressed. But my apologies, Councillor Robinson. Yeah, according to the report, there's 179. Most of those date back to the 2-year window between 1994 and 96 when governments were in rotation of offloading or downloading. And as a result, those 179 units, for the most part, are based on codes, fire code and so forth. And I've only seen one, and it was more of a fire trap than many of the illegal ones I've seen. So I don't want to paint the brush on that, but it was quite an eye-opener.
All right, Councillor, so that's the sweetest way any of us has ever been told, read the report, right? All right. Councillor Elger.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Question is, did I hear you say you wanted them to be allowed everywhere throughout every residential area in Oakville? That's what that's what your wish is?
Councillor Elger, through you, Mayor, that is actually one of the provincial mandates, that every home, regardless of whether it's detached, semi-detached, townhome, link home, you name it, that's what the provincial encouragement is right now. Now, I'm not suggesting that be right. I still believe that there has to be, number one, dignity in the environment, number two, safety and the health concerns, and also the character of the neighborhood. All right, and I speak to that because this doesn't work. It's not a cookie cutter model. The home that you see up above there is a home in Burlington, and I'm quite excited to say that this is a home that my wife and I purchased last month. We have already worked with one of the agencies in the region to set up a family on the main floor, and another family will be moving in. We just got zoning approval this morning. Another family will be set up in the basement. And to make it financially sustainable, not every home's going to work, and not every homeowner is cut out to be a landlord. And so this is where, through a group called Affordable Housing Halton, we are doing our best to introduce the idea through various groups in Burlington where the bylaws already exist. And the feedback has been tremendous. In fact, I was talking to our neighbor yesterday, or just today, and she said, you should go talk to Harry behind you. I think he's perfect for this. So all they need to do is understand it and be aware of it, and it starts making sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for your... Oh, Councillor Adams.
Can I ask you just one question about, we're talking about the zoning and regulations that go with these things.
Yes.
Where's the best place to go for council members to find information that would help them understand what kind of setbacks and what kind of requirements should go along with garden suites or secondary suites?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mayor. The experience that we are journeying on right now in Burlington is a very good one. The City of Burlington's been very responsive to questions and have been very challenging too, to make sure that codes are in place. So I would suggest the City of Burlington's bylaws and the related zoning requirements would be a good start. I'm not saying that that's the best. I understand the City of Guelph and the region of Waterloo are both very strong ambassadors for this and have been for many years. Those would be two other sources that would be worth investigating.
Are there other jurisdictions outside of Ontario?
Outside of Ontario, yes. The province of Alberta has a 10-year plan that's about halfway through its journey, and they are on track to end homelessness and I believe they've got 5 years left on their track record. Okay. And they've done it, again, making sure that the dollars put into supportive housing are being realized from other ministries and other areas that are saving in the process.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Perhaps this time. Thank you very much, Mr. Brown, for your information.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. Thank you all.
All right, Council, I'll look for a decision. Councillor Knoll moves the staff recommendation. And
Your Worship,
we have here
thank you.
Fresh, this just in. Moved by Councillor Knoll, the Planning Services Report PD-071-12 dated September 20th, 2012 be received. Number two, that Planning Services staff be directed to provide a report on live work units addressing matters including current trends and research, challenges with implementation and operation, and an assessment of such developments in Oakville. Thank you very much, Councillor, for that. I think that's a very welcome.
Your Worship, can I just comment on that just briefly?
Certainly.
Just for members of the audience and those at home, this wasn't obviously a hot part of the presentation tonight, the whole live work concept, but I just wanted to explain that this evolved from the in-zone committee meeting this afternoon, and this was an issue that was raised, and so this was a suggestion to action that information with that information retrieval. So if anybody's watching and saying, did I miss something? No, you didn't. That was from this afternoon's committee. But also, before with the vote, I just want to thank Mr. Brown for his presentation, very enlightening, and congratulations on your new investment in human capital in Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knoll. With any luck, this report will add another string to the bow or another arrow to the quiver. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, and that is carried. And that brings us to number 5, the recommendation report for the zoning bylaw amendment for Peppergate Developments, Inc. And we have our manager of current planning, Charles McConnell, here. And for the public's benefit, he'll walk us through a synopsis of the report that you, Council, have already read. And if you'll give your attention to Mr. McConnell, he will edify us.
Good evening, Mayor Burton and members of Council. This recommendation report can be found on page 95 of your agenda this evening. So this report deals with a zoning amendment application submitted by Peppergate Developments Incorporated to rezone the lands situated at 2385 to 2389 Culsa Gate, situated on the east side of Culsa Gate, which is formerly the Old Bronte Road, and is south of Pine Glen Road. The site has approximately 70 meters of frontage along Culsa Gate, and will also have frontage on the future Barronwood Drive extension. The land is approximately 1.06 hectares in size. The purpose of the zoning amendment application is to rezone the land from the residential R9 special provision zone to an R8 special provision zone to permit 166 stacked townhouse units. The original proposal contemplated 147 stacked townhouse units, as you can see on the illustration at the top of the screen. And subsequent to the original submission, the application was amended to contemplate 166 units within the 7 blocks. The units along the westerly and easterly ends of the property will face Culsa Gate and Barronwood Drive respectively, and the interior units will face the proposed condominium roadway. The units facing Culsa Gate have been designed to provide at-grade access for the possible future conversion to commercial retail units. The proposal contemplates 250 parking spaces, 200 of which will be underground. Access will be provided off of Barronwood Drive. The overall land holding includes a portion of the road allowance of Culsa Gate, which implements the Culsa Gate streetscape study. A confidential memo from Realty Services is on tonight's agenda for your consideration. This is simply an enlarged plan of the revised proposal. And this, Mr. Chairman, is a copy of the concept plan that's attached to zoning bylaw number 2005-015 that approved the zoning on the lands originally to allow a 1 6-story building and a 1 8-story apartment building on the subject lands. The lands to the east of Barronwood Drive were zoned to an R7 zone to allow for street townhouse units. The zoning on the east side of Barronwood Drive is not changing, and this zoning permission will continue to apply. The subject lands are designated as Main Street 2, where a residential density range of 50 to 100 units per site hectare is required. A minimum building height of 2 stories and a maximum building height of 6 stories are permitted in this designation. For the lands fronting Culsa Gate, the land use designation is Urban Center, and it allows a minimum residential density of 100 units per site hectare, and a minimum height of 2 stories and a maximum height of 8 to 10 stories is permitted. Additional land use policies in Section 22 of the Livable Oakville Plan includes permission for stacked townhouses, which are being contemplated in this proposal. The proposal has been designed with the principles and objectives of the Culsa Gate streetscape study in mind, which promotes a higher density, compact, mixed-use format, promoting a continuous built form along a street edge and a pedestrian-oriented environment. Vehicular access and parking is provided towards the rear of the property in support of these principles. The reduced right-of-way width contributes to this streetscape plan. The Castlegate Streetscape Study originated from the Livable Oakville Plan, which states that streetscape guidelines be prepared for Palermo Village to establish standards for built form and the treatment of public and private realms. The lands to be conveyed to the applicant include Parcel A on the illustration in front of you, being a strip of land 2.3 meters wide, and secondly, Parcel B, which has been referred to as the Notch, and that is 5.37 meters in width by a length of 19.66 meters. With parcels A and B being conveyed, the remaining right-of-way width of Castlegate will be 37.1 meters. These images portray the proposed architectural style and floor layout of the interior units fronting the condominium road. 4 residential units will be provided within each module. So the dotted line, so it's the housing between each dotted line. The unit sizes range between 950 square feet to 1,300 square feet. This image shows the ground floor residential units for those units fronting onto Castlegate that will have ground floor access or street grade access from Castlegate into the first floor of the unit that could be converted to commercial purposes. On page 108 in your report highlights specific urban design requirements that would help implement the streetscape study, such as the primary entrances and 50% of the frontage being of a glazing material, clear width entrances, level and uninterrupted access, level and unencumbered interior space. These are matters that would be further implemented through the site plan approval stage. From a zoning perspective, these lands are proposed to be rezoned, as I had mentioned, from the R9 to an R8 Special Provision 776 zone, as can be identified in the bylaw, which is before you this evening as well for your consideration, to accommodate the proposed development. A holding H provision has been included that will allow the ground floor units facing Castlegate to be converted to commercial units, subject to a transportation impact study to evaluate parking and traffic impacts from the introduction of commercial uses on the site. So through the public consultative process that this application underwent, a number of issues were raised by members of the public, including vehicular access onto Barronwood Drive. These matters have been assessed, wherein the traffic impact statement that was submitted indicates that adequate capacity exists along Barronwood Drive to accommodate the additional traffic generated by this development. Access off of Barronwood Drive would also significantly contribute to fulfilling the goals and objectives of the Castlegate Streetscape Study. So just by way of some background and some context, the subject lands are part of a draft-approved plan of subdivision, which received that approval status in 2005 under the subdivision name at that time of the AMC development. This created 2 blocks of land on either side of the future extension of Barronwood Drive. The draft plan approval lapses in February of 2013. So just some matters to take into consideration concerning the extension of Barronwood Drive. It's noted that Barronwood Drive is intended to be extended through to Pine Glen Road, and it already extends to the southerly limit of the subject lands themselves. It is required to provide access to the R7 zone lands, the Block 1, to the right of what's labeled as Street A, and is required for the efficient looping of services. The subdivision agreement for the subdivision to the south contains a clause advising that Barronwood Drive is to be extended through to Pine Glen. The extension of Barronwood Drive beyond the limits of these lands in question and over the lands to the property to the north occupied by the Sikh temple can only occur by the submission of a draft plan of subdivision application by those landowners. With respect to access off of Barronwood Drive for this development, it's desired so as to conform with the Tulsa Gate streetscape study, and there is no technical traffic reason to deny access from Barronwood Drive. From a traffic perspective, the extra 166 units proposed by this development on this site will generate 78 vehicle trips in the AM and 91 vehicle trips in the PM. And over a 24-hour period, it will generate 965 trips. Excuse me. The designed capacity for Barronwood Drive is approximately 5,000 vehicles per day. The existing capacity or load of Barronwood Drive is approximately 2,300 cars per day. So there's ample capacity that does exist within Barronwood Road for additional traffic. So, again, through the circulation of the application, it was circulated to various internal technical review agencies and departments, and any technical matters that were raised throughout the processing of the application have been resolved. A detailed implementation will occur through the site plan process, a future draft plan of condominium application, and the registration of the plan of subdivision itself. The proposal conforms with the livable Oakville plan, is compatible in scale, height, and massing with the surrounding development. It satisfies the goals and objectives of the Tulsa Gate streetscape study and represents good planning. On this basis, Mr. Chairman, staff are supportive of the proposal as amended and would recommend approval based on their recommendation as found on pages 95 and 96 and as presented before you on the screen. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Councillor Elgar.
Thank you for your presentation, all the information. There's a lot of information here to comprehend. But the biggest issue we've got as far as the residents are concerned, I think everybody's happy that it's been dropped down from 8 stories down to 4 stories. But it's traffic. Can you go over the numbers again, like what Barronwood is designed for and where it is today and what it will be as far as vehicle counts?
So just to reiterate those numbers, the extra 166 units on the site would generate 78 vehicle trips in the morning and 91 vehicle trips in the afternoon or the PM hours, and over a 24-hour period would generate 965 trips. The design capacity of Barronwood is approximately 5,000 per day. And the existing capacity is approximately 2,300 per day.
So how would that compare with other similar streets just to the east of Barronwood? Would they be in the same range, like the 5,000 vehicles a day?
As far as the capacity of those roads, I believe it would be similar, yes.
The ones that actually do connect to Pine Glen now, what would they be at? Would they be at the maximum now?
I don't think
we
they're
have
at
any idea?
The maximum. I think this is actually lower, generally speaking, than some of the surrounding roads.
Back when DiMaggio was around with AMC, the design was to build the 8-story and 6-story apartment, but it was going to be an entrance and exit off of Tulsa Gate. So remind me again why it flipped?
Well, that was a different proposal at a different time. That was 2005 when that application came forward. And that predated livable Oakville and the requirement within livable Oakville to undertake a streetscape study. So the Palermo area and the Tulsa Gate was identified as the downtown street, so to speak, for that area. And so since that time, and as per the requirement in livable Oakville, the Tulsa Gate streetscape study has been prepared and has been endorsed by council, which has established those goals and principles to create a particular vision along Tulsa Gate. So this is now a new proposal since that 2005 draft approval, and is being evaluated quite differently than that AMC proposal.
So if we're not happy with what we have before, so we want the entrance to flip onto Barronwood, what does that entail from a staff point of view and a timing point of view for the residents? And also coupled with that, could they then flip back and go to 8 stories again and 6 stories?
To answer your last question first, those zoning permissions are in place presently, so they could work with that zoning. It would require site plan approval. What would it do to the current application? Staff are obviously supportive of the recommendation that is before you this evening. We are supportive of the Culsegate streetscape study quite clearly. It does fulfill the mandate as established in the Livable Oakville plan. So to revert the traffic to Old Culsegate would be contrary to the proposal. If there were that appetite to consider that, we would recommend that the matter be referred back to staff so that we could examine it very carefully, what implications it would have on the zoning, the implementing zoning bylaw that is before you this evening. It could quite likely require the submission of additional studies that are required with a complete application, so it could very likely take it through the entire process back for public consultation, through a public information meeting, and a public meeting. So that would result in a deferral of the matter well into the new year.
Okay. Well, it's all sounding so good so far, isn't it? The one thing that is maybe not a major issue to the residents yet, but every time something happens and a new building site starts, the biggest concern is construction traffic to the site. If in fact they go off of Barronwood into this subdivision, would that mean we could still divert construction traffic through Kelsey Gate so that we don't have the mud in the streets for the next 2 years?
Yes.
And all the other things that go with it, with the high volume of truck traffic and everything going in and out?
Yes, through you, Mayor. There is a specific provision incorporated into the zoning bylaw that would allow for the construction traffic to be accessed off of Culsegate.
Okay. Just hang on, I just want to check. Okay, that's all the questions I have at this time. I'll hear from delegations. Thank you.
Any other members of council? Madam Clerk, would you call the registered delegations?
Yes, our first delegation is here on behalf of the applicant, Lori McPherson.
Now, I'm wondering, do you want to go now, or are you quite sure you want to go now?
I'm in your hands.
Sometimes the applicant likes to go last because questions get raised.
Okay, we'll go last then.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. Madam Clerk, next delegation.
Next delegation is Pete. That's all I've got.
Pete, number 5.
Hello, everyone. Your council, staff, and Honorable Mayor. There's a couple of things that came up tonight that I wanted to address.
Pete, could you start out by telling us the rest of your name?
Oh, Pete Salem, I'm sorry. S-A-L-E-M, as in the Salem cigarettes, but I don't smoke. So the residents, and I represent probably 50 to 100 residents, as well as Camilla, and, sorry, names? Yes. Okay. There's a few of us here that represent several neighbors who could not be here today. We have all their names on a petition, and you've probably met 30 of them 6 months ago. We love the plan that we saw proposed, so there's nothing against what they propose to build in that area. The only concern, and now that was mentioned this evening, if traffic, construction traffic can be moved, that's great. That's one of the concerns that we had, so we feel a little bit better, I think, with that. However, some of the emails that you have on pages 130 to 140 in the report, I don't want to read them all again, and I shouldn't have to because you've read them all. However, I feel that because the people are not here, their voices are not heard. So I will highlight some of the things that were mentioned, and I'll try to be brief. Traffic was a concern. 5,000 no, sorry, I may have, 965 trips per day was mentioned. There's nothing wrong with 965 trips coming off of Bronte Road, Pine Glen, and Castlegate, in all of our opinion. There are thousands and thousands, unfortunately I don't have the number, of cars that drive by there per hour. Traffic on Barronwood, the amount of cars, that part is hard to swallow. It even choked up our speaker earlier. All of the numbers that were stated would be fine coming in off of Bronte Road, fine coming in off of Pine Glen, and fine coming in on of Castlegate. In fact, Lakeshore and Bronte has that type of traffic now in a commercial area with beautiful walkways and beautiful areas to walk by dog and people to have family trips down there. So I don't understand how it can't be diverted onto Castlegate. So the whole proposal tonight can be summed up by only one minor change needs to be made. In fact, only a few words need to be changed. Access via Pine Glen and Castlegate, which makes a lot more logical sense, and is a shorter trip for any one of the residents that wish to invest in that property, of which one of them is myself. I'm not really sure why we're here tonight. We may be using up valuable time, yours and ours. Since 6 months ago, we clearly stated what we wanted and thought we had the approval and everybody here on board with us. We thought we were actually trying to get the developer on side, but as I've found out recently, they are on side. They've actually paid for reports to be done that the access can come in via Castlegate. They've got beautiful drawings done. I'm sure you have access to them. There's really nothing that needs to be decided here tonight except diverting the lengthy drive through Barronwood Drive and creating a safety hazard for children and families when Castlegate is already being used for construction right now and could be used as a beautiful access and increase commercial traffic for the commercial vendors that want people to drive by and see their beautiful storefronts. That's all I have to say tonight.
Thank you very much for taking the time to say it. Madam Clerk, Councillor Elgar.
Your Worship, I wonder, we've got traffic engineering staff here tonight, and, you know, I appreciate the numbers that probably traffic engineering staff have, and when he talked about Bronte Road, and I'm wondering, what is, on West Oak Trails, what would the traffic count be around Bronte and West Oak?
Bronte Road and West Oak Trails. Through you, Your Worship, the 2011 volumes, daily volumes for West Oak Trails just west of Bronte is 7,300 vehicles, which is a major collector under the functional classification of the town.
And right now, if you're going off of West Oak up Barronwood, the count is, like, where would the traffic count have been? I think I heard 2,400 vehicles.
Yeah,
where would that traffic counter have been? Would it include traffic going into the plaza, or how does that work?
Through you, Your Worship, we have a count that was taken in 2008, which is on Barronwood, north of West Oak Trails, just south of the plaza. So it does include traffic that has been generated by the neighborhood plaza on the corner. And it is approximately 2,300 vehicles per day in 2008.
Grand Oak Trail. I won't do any more. I'm just trying to get a ballpark here.
I have it if you need
Oh,
it.
but just the streets in that area. I'm just trying to try to be reasonable here of what numbers are on other streets in the area. Whatever, if you could give.
What I have available, which is identified in our State of the Road report, is Grand Oak Trail in 2011, just south of Upper Middle Road, is 3,800 vehicles per day. And West Oak Trails between Grand Oak and Postmaster is identified as 8,500 per day. That's the information I have available right now in terms of the road network in the area.
Yeah, and that's a good question. What the width of those roads in comparison? I wonder the width of Barronwood especially, and another similar road of the same width.
The width of Barron Road is, from curb face to curb face is 8.5 meter road. It's identified as, I believe, just let me get all my information in handy here, 20 meter right of way. West Oak Trails is a major collector roadway, and it is identified as a 26 meter right of way. I don't have the curb face to curb face dimensions, but typically they are greater than a local road, which would likely be around 10.5 to 12.5 meter road width.
Grand Oak, because there's two, you got, where you mentioned the traffic counts, that's where you've got two schools right there also. What is the width of Grand Oak? And what is the ultimate capacity of Grand Oak?
Grand Oak Trails is identified in the official plan as a major collector roadway, and its typical volumes would be about 10,000 vehicles per day. That's an average for major collector roadways. But as I mentioned earlier, what we have in our counts today, or in 2011, was 3,800.
So, but a major collector is 10,000.
Yes.
A minor collector is what's the ultimate for it, 5,000?
5,000, yes.
Okay.
The maximum, yes.
Okay, but are all the other streets built like to the 5,000 count, basically?
Well, given the connectivity of Barronwood Drive, which connects from Pine Glen to West Oak Trails, it isn't as functionally as operational as Grand Oak Trails. So Grand Oak has schools that gain access to it, as well as residential properties. So it has a higher status in terms of classification. Barronwood is, I would say, operationally functions higher than a local road, but lower than Barronwood Drive, because it does, in terms of connectivity, collect the traffic from the local streets, such as Sequoia, onto Barronwood and distribute it through to the rest of the road network to West Oak Trails and also Pine Glen in the future.
Thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. Sorry.
So just to make, it may be the hour, but did I hear you say that Barronwood is more than a local collector, but less than Barronwood? Did you mean less than Grand Oak?
Yes, yes. I stand corrected.
I want to clear that up.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions here? Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
The next delegation is Camilla. Cleveland, maybe?
Do you have a name?
Camilla.
I wonder if you could give us your last name, too.
My last name is Cleveland.
Thank you.
Okay. Your Worship, members of council, I am here and I came last March with a number of the residents, and we oppose the use of Barronwood as far as the development for Peppergate. We really did feel that a solution that the council had come to some sort of agreement with us, because we didn't hear anything for 6 months. And now only to find out that the whole thing has come up again. I strongly feel that Castlegate should use Pine Glen and not Barronwood. My reasons is that we're a narrow street. If you talk about developing Palermo Village, I can't see that it would deter the village atmosphere by having the access via Pine Glen for the Castlegate development. It's just totally ludicrous to me that you would want to use Barronwood for an address on Castlegate. Also, the amount of time that this whole thing is taking, I think it would be better for our community to solve it as quickly as possible, whatever way it goes. But I hope you side with the residents. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for your information. Any questions? Madam Clerk, the next delegation.
We have no further other than Laurie McPherson.
Yes, sir.
There.
Welcome. Just introduce yourself, please, for council.
My name is Carlos Aquilele.
I'll spell it, Akhilele. I think what I want to say is we've been talking about a lot of numbers, and I want to speak to the human factor. None of the member of staff who are making these recommendations live on Barronwood Drive. They probably don't even know what the street looks like. This is our homes. These are trucks driving down our homes 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. 5,000, 3,000, 2,000, doesn't really matter. What matters is that this is not something that we are comfortable about. It's not about, the figures and the studies. Those studies are not realistic. It's the human factor. And we human beings on this street, we're not comfortable with these changes being made. And we're trying to talk to human beings to say we're not comfortable with it. For me, that's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about you understanding what our problems are, the council understanding what our personal problems are. And we have a lot of problems with some of the recommendations that have been made. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar?
Sir, if you could back, are you one of the original owners on Barronwood?
Correct.
Now, what I've read in the staff report and what they've told me is that everyone signed in their purchase and sale agreement that in fact they acknowledged that Barronwood would go through to Pine Glen at some point in time.
Correct.
You were aware of that?
Oh yes, I am aware of that. And if it does go to Pine Glen, logically, anyone who's going to live in this new development is going to make a turn into Pine Glen. They're not going to go down that long route, which is why I said the personal factor. It's a very long drive from Barronwood Drive all the way down onto West Oak Trail, onto Brundy, all the way up Brundy, just to pass where the development is. It's a full U-turn, and at the bottom of a U-turn. So if there's an extension from Barronwood Drive onto Pine Glen, users will turn off Pine Glen onto Castlegate or onto Castlegate and off onto Barronwood Drive. Again, I repeat the whole personal factor, because if I could take you all out for coffee tomorrow morning and take you on a drive around the area, you get to understand what we're talking about. It looks logical to the committee on paper, but living there, it doesn't just make any sense for anybody.
You mentioned all the trucks. Now, is that construction trucks, or is that just everybody that lives on Barronwood is driving a truck nowadays?
Construction traffic.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay. So once the construction is done, that is done, and that's a huge concern with everybody at every new building site. But that should soon be over.
Correct.
Based on what
well, it's I don't know how long the implementation is going to take, but we also have to bear in mind. I know I've read the recommendations, and they've talked about putting clauses in the contract or whatever to safeguard traffic or safeguard dust and vibrations, etc. How do you monitor that? How do you measure dust on the street? It's how do I do that? Take a picture? How do we monitor? How do we enforce some of these clauses? So I feel these clauses are things you put on paper, and someone sits behind a desk on a computer and does a study, but it has no personal touch to it. It has no understanding of the personal impact it's going to have on these lives of us on Barronwood Drive. That's my issue here today.
But you did, apparently the staff are saying that this building site that we're talking about, the truck traffic will come off of Castlegate rather than Barronwood.
I think that only just happened after Pete talked about it, but in the recommendations, the traffic, the construction traffic is still going to go through Barronwood Drive. That's the recommendation from the committee.
Okay, I'm going to get we'll get more clarification on that, just so that everybody leaves here clear, because that's a huge issue, because it's going to be more than a 1 month affair. You're right. I agree.
Correct, and I stand corrected, and I hope I'm corrected, but from what I understood from recommendation, construction traffic was going to go down Barronwood Drive as well. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar, you want to turn to that issue?
I do. I'd like to get clarification from staff that in fact, at site plan, we can enforce construction traffic, the route it would take.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll refer you to the specific clause within the zoning bylaw before you this evening, and it's on page 155 of the agenda, or it's the third page of the bylaw at the top, and it's Roman numeral XIV, and it says a driveway shall not be permitted to cross the rear lot line, and in this case, the rear lot line is defined as the lot line adjacent to Castlegate. So it says a driveway shall not be permitted to cross the rear lot line except a temporary driveway for the purpose of providing construction access to the lot. So that means that construction access will be allowed to cross that property line from Calcigate. That would be the implementing bylaw. So as we do go forward through site plan and deal with the site plan agreement and the details for construction, ingress and egress, that's the operative clause that staff would rely upon.
Okay, I think that clarifies it for everybody. I thank you.
Madam Clerk, any other delegations? Any other members of the public with information for the council? Ms. McPherson, did you want to offer any information?
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. My name is Laurie McPherson. I'm with Bousfields Inc., and we're the planning consultants for Peppergate. We have been working with staff very hard since our application submission in November to come up with a concept plan for the site, which not only worked well on the site, but also implemented the vision for Calcigate as set out in the streetscape plan, which was adopted by council in the spring. We're here to support the recommendations in the staff report. The only comments that I would like to make is that, first of all, with regard to the property issue, there were two pieces of land that we support the transfer sale to the site to level it out. I think Mr. McConnell pointed out there was the long, narrow A, and then there's B, which we call the notch. And at this point, it's important for my client to understand if Part B, the notch, is included in the site plan because it affects the layout of the plan, and we would request that a decision be made on that. The A part, which is the part that would affect all of Calcigate and any other developments that come along, our proposal can work with or without it, but we do appreciate if you could deal with the issue of B, the notch. I just have an overhead, if we could, just so you know what I'm talking about clearly.
There we go.
So as pointed out, A is the long linear one, which would affect all of Calcigate. B is the little notch that just affects our property. And you can appreciate for the layout of the site plan, it's important for us to understand whether B is in or it's out. With respect to the traffic issue, as part of our application, we had to submit a traffic study, which we did and which was reviewed by staff and accepted. I think the statistics show, and town staff have accepted that Barronwood is operating under capacity, that it can accommodate the cars, and that it can still offer a good level of service. So we're confident that Barronwood can accommodate the traffic coming onto it from this development. We're very keen to get moving. My client is very anxious to get going with this project. In that regard, we'd really appreciate a decision tonight and not a deferral so that we can finalize plans and get moving with this project and bring some new life to this part of Calcigate and implement the streetscape vision. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your information. Councillor Elgar may have one for you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Earlier this evening when I was asking Mr. McConnell some questions, he stated that if I throw it back and want staff to review putting the entrance off of Calcigate instead of Barronwood, then in fact they're going to need more reports and it takes time, and I want to know what your feelings are towards that. Are you willing to take the time?
On behalf of my client, he's here and they're here and they can speak, but my understanding is no, they would like a decision tonight and they would like to get going. Another deferral would not be something that they would support or recommend that you do. We would request a decision tonight.
Okay, so that's...
We have been working with staff since November. We have come up with a plan that implements the vision. We have supporting materials that support that to put it back into another review process. When we have a plan that works, we would like to proceed.
So,
like I heard,
Councillor,
sorry.
maybe, I'm not sure if you heard her say at the top that they support the staff recommendation before you tonight.
My next question is, one of the members that spoke earlier, one of the residents, stated that in fact there was already reports submitted saying the entrance could be off of Kelsey Gate, and I'm wondering, were those given to the town? Because as far as I was aware, there was only one application submitted to the town.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not seen those. I do know, though, that our original concept, back when we first met with staff, did have the access off of Gate because we were looking at the previous approval. And so we did do studies, and we were satisfied that that level of traffic could come in off of Gate. Working with staff in the vision and understanding how staff wanted Gate to work, we developed a concept plan with the driveway from Barronwood. But I think that from a technical traffic point of view, Gate can accept the traffic. The issue is more the vision for Gate and what it is to become.
Thank you very much for your information.
So both streets can accommodate the traffic is what you're saying, and the streetscape trumped the original plan.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much for bringing your information. All right, council, I'll restrict it to table, and I will look for a decision. Councillor Lapworth, you have a question for staff.
Okay, this is concerning the volume of traffic on Barronwood. Volume is one thing, speed is another. Is there any opportunity to have a reduced speed limit on Barronwood?
Ms. Rogers.
Sorry, through your worship, could you repeat the question?
Yeah,
He wants to know
volume of traffic.
if there's an opportunity to lower the speed limit on Barronwood.
Currently, the speed limit on Barronwood is 50 kilometers per hour. Within the town, we designate 40 kilometers per hour. We restrict that to adjacent to school zones. So would there be a likelihood to reduce it to 40? I would say no, because it would compromise what we have throughout the town, and to recognize the school zones are at a lower speed limit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Lapworth. So, Councillor Elgar.
Your Worship, in my 12 years on council, this has been the hardest one that I've had to deal with. And we've got the numbers, and I know what's going to happen if I put my motion to refuse it. I'm going to lose it. But then they're going to go, the developer then goes to the OMB, and because of the planning reports, the developer's reports, it will get approved, and I'm concerned it could even get approved with an awful lot more people going down that street, because they could, as of right, they can bump it up to 8 stories, and they don't even have to come back here. So I am going to have to move the staff recommendation with the condition that that construction traffic absolutely will be enforced, and they cannot, and I know it's not going away, because that's a big concern on that street right now with the trucks up and down there, and I know that. So we've got to make sure that that is enforced about construction traffic does not use Barronwood at any time, that that will be strictly enforced.
Well, Councillor, you're on the site plan committee, so you're in a unique position to be able to make sure that happens.
And you know I will.
I do. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion carries. That brings us to item, now that brings us to C1. I hope I can keep everybody's attention for this for a second. We need a decision on C1, and I'm going to look to Councillor Elgar. Councillor Demoff wants to go into camera on C1. Okay, we have a motion from Councillor Demoff to go into a session closed to the public for, do you want to name the purpose? Okay, so for the purpose of receiving communication or information subject to solicitor-client privilege, which is a permitted use of a meeting closed to the public, concerning litigation or potential litigation, and what's the other one?
May I say something, please?
What about this one?
I just wonder if the whole decision was made before we even came here tonight, because it felt
Excuse
that
me,
way.
excuse me. We need order, and you're out of order at this point. I'm sorry. But no, the decision wasn't made before you got here tonight. We wrestled with it in front of you. So please consider the courtesy I'm showing you and don't interrupt the meeting again.
Yes, Your Mayor, but I did not take my full 10 minutes. I think it would be.
We can't compound the interruption by continuing it. You have to stop. So I'm trying to get this done for item 5 rather than C1. I misspoke. So,
That's the appendix H to item 5.
okay, so it's already caught by the motion? Thank you, that's all I wanted. So I just wanted to be clear that we'd done that because we had a special request to make sure that we were doing it, and I wasn't clear. So staff, you're good with that?
If I understand what has been done, the confidential item related to this, the Peppergate application, has also been approved with that motion?
Thank you. Okay, that's what I was just trying to make sure of. Now, so C1, Councillor DeMoff's motion is in order, it's on the floor. All those in favor? That carries.
To go in camera.
Sorry, I understood you to say you wanted to go into camera. So we've just taken a vote necessary to go into camera, and we're about to rig the chamber for being in camera, and then you can ask your question. Commissioner.
Mayor Burton, there is one item left on the agenda that was part of the public session, and that related to the heritage minutes. I was just wondering whether or not you wanted to deal with that before you went into in camera.
All right. I'm sure we can do that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's done. We're not in yet. We're not in yet. Now, we're still going to come out of private session and rise and report and everything in public. So, you know, let's not get too worried about this procedure thing here. So, I believe we're in camera now.
Not quite.
Almost. All right, we now resume the meeting in the session open to the public. And I can advise that council has issued direction that the town attend in opposition to the appeal before the Ontario Municipal Board regarding Committee of Adjustment Decision A-131-2012 at 22 Lakeshore Road West.
Who moved that?
And actually, I'll look for a motion now. Councillor DeMoff moves it. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's even better. We did it in public. So now I'd like to ask council to turn to agenda item number 6, the Heritage Oakville Advisory Committee addendum that was distributed, and I'd look for questions or a motion or decision.
I thought we did this before we went in camera.
I thought it was unclear whether we were in public or not, so just for the sake of thoroughness, I'm going to ask again for it. Councillor Adams moves the staff recommendation. Any discussion? All those in favor? I need a few more hands. That carries. I now ask for a motion to rise and report. Councillor Lapworth, thank you. All those in favor? That carries. I rise and report that the Committee of the Whole has met and has made recommendations on public hearing items 1 and 2, discussion items 3, 4, and 5, and confidential discussion item C1, and advisory committee minutes item 6, as noted by the clerk. I would look for a mover and seconder for the report. Councillor Grant, thank you. Councillor Adams, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That carries. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Seeing none, I will move on to consideration and reading of the bylaws. I need a mover and seconder for those. Councillor Johnson and Councillor DeMoff, thank you very much for your help. This is authority for bylaws 2012-85, 93, 94, and 101. As I understand it, we're going to have separate votes on 93 because of the declaration of conflict of interest. So We have a mover and seconder for all of them. I'm going to call the vote on 85, 94, and 101, and Councillor Knoll can participate in those. And then we will do 93 separately, and Councillor Knoll will sit back. All those in favor of 85, 94, and 101? All those opposed? They are adopted. Now I'm calling bylaw 93. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That bylaw is adopted. That completes our agenda. Thank you for your time and attention, and we are adjourned.